Ladies and gentlemen, it's my favorite type of video to make today, and that is the Q&A videos. I get questions from you guys. You post questions about altcoins, you post questions about Bitcoin, the market in general, traditional markets, macroeconomy, and I answer them. Generally speaking, you guys offer some very insightful questions, and hopefully I give you some insightful answers. So look down below for timestamps, and you'll see the questions timestamped down there. Skip to the ones that are relevant for you if you're interested in doing so. Otherwise, just watch the whole video. I try and pick ones that I have valuable answers for only. In this video, I'll be answering questions about Federal Reserve interest rate cuts, what it means for the market, a massive misconception, by the way, in the minds of most investors and traders. People seem to think that we need to see rates dropping for altcoin seasons or for Bitcoin bull runs to occur. It's not true. I'll look into that and debunk it today. There is a misconception going around that retail investors need to be of significant financial standing in order for altcoin seasons to occur. I'll look into the underlying market dynamics of what actually drives price action. Is it retail investors or is it whales? And respond to that. Then I'll look into a question about the Gaussian channel weekly chart indicator, which, by the way, is a very important indicator. It's one of my fundamental toolbox indicators I use to differentiate bull markets from bear markets. And he's asking a question about whether buying near that Gaussian channel is an excellent opportunity or a blunder. And finally, a question which most people would find useful is a question about USDT versus USDC. Which one is safer? My thoughts on a potential collapse of USDT. So if any of these 5 questions interest you, stick around. And you might be surprised here because I think all of them are actually incredibly useful. Before we get into it today, guys, check out the Bitunix Exchange. It's global, non-KYC. It's never been hacked before, and it's been on the market for 4 entire years. It's an exceptionally good track record. You're not going to get that many places these days, especially not in a globally accessible exchange. It's got very low trading fees, and with my referral link down below, you can sign up, click that link and sign up with just an email address and a password, and you will get a bonus exclusive Wolves of Crypto 15% trading fee discount attached to your account for life, as well as up to $8,000 in trading rewards in USDT. So if you're interested in that, help out the channel and help out yourself by using that link down below to sign up. Guys, part 2 of this video will be coming in about, let's say, 16 hours from now, and I'll respond to the rest of the questions here. We've got plenty more. Let's get into part 1. Right, first question. The Fed is holding rates steady, but they said they expect 2 cuts later this year. How likely do you think it is this will play out, and how would this affect the cycle? Let me clear up a very common misconception that many people seem to have. I don't know where they get it from, but it seems like a lot of people think that we need to see low interest rates in order to see a bull market. It's simply not true, and I'm not implying that this commenter thinks that, but a lot of people certainly do. All we need to do, guys, is look at the price cycles on Bitcoin, overlay the US interest rates on top of it, and see that during 2017, which was basically peak parabola in crypto bull markets for altcoins and for Bitcoin, really was the best cycle we've ever seen. It was the easiest cycle to make money in. I mean, I've never had an easier period of money making than that. That whole cycle took place within interest rates increasing, within quantitative tightening, with no massive amount of money being printed and flooded straight into markets. It's only in 2020 that we saw that due to the COVID collapse, of course, and due to the printing that took place after that. But there's no established trend that we need to see rates going down and we need to see quantitative easing for the market to rise. It's simply not true. Now, what there is a trend for, and this isn't even a crypto-related trend, but it is a trend nevertheless, there's a trend that people react to the perceived probabilities of the future, not to the current environment. So we are perceiving here that there are going to be rate cuts in the future. There's going to be rate cuts this year. You're correct in what you said in the comment. Yes, there's likely going to be 2 rate cuts this year of 25 basis points. That's true. And that perception, that hope of, oh, wow, look, quantitative easing is coming. There's probably going to be some money printed. Spending's going to increase. That is what leads to the pump, not the actual decrease in rates itself. So number 1, markets don't necessarily move because of rate cuts. And as we see with crypto specifically, rate increases have actually seen bullish market environments before, like 2017. So there's nothing saying that we need to see rates going down for crypto to move upwards and finish the cycle. That's just simply not a thing. And second of all, anticipation is more important than reality in financial markets. And currently we are anticipating rate cuts, which probably means there's a slight bullish undertone. As for the specific part of your question, do you think we'll see 2 rate cuts this year? As I said, I probably do. And the reason I think that is not because of any personal analysis I've done. It's simply because of what the market expects. Go to the website, CME Group, go to FedWatch and look at the market's expectations. This is taking into account everything you can think of. It's an objective kind of gold standard in understanding where rates will go. Obviously, the probabilities shift, but at this point in time, we are expecting a rate cut, 25 basis point in September and 25 basis point in December. Again, probability shift, but that's what the market's expecting right now. How much time do we have to wait for a pump on altcoins? I'm going to interpret that question as how long into altcoin season begins. And that's a nuanced question because altcoin season should have begun in November last year. If we're talking cyclically, if we're talking how the regular trend of altcoins in relation to Bitcoin performance has gone, we generally, in the last 2 cycles at least, had a 315-day long altcoin season in which Bitcoin dominance dropped for 315 days while the market rose. Typical altcoin seasons, very, very parabolic in 2017, pretty parabolic in 2021. It started in November. We saw, you might remember, November last year. Around that period, really actually starting in, probably October a little bit, we saw altcoins really start to kick off, and then it kind of just flatlined. And that's because of what Bitcoin's been doing, in my view, in my analysis. I don't think that the market environment we've seen on Bitcoin has been conducive to massive altcoin gains, because altcoin seasons and altcoins outperforming Bitcoin generally comes about via hype, via greed. And when we see 8-month consolidations on basically 3 separate occurrences, that's not a market environment that's breeding greed or hype, right? That's a market environment that's pretty boring. And that's basically the antithesis of altcoin performance. And for that reason, I think we've just seen altcoins do badly this cycle. That doesn't rule out the possibility of an altcoin season in the final months of this cycle. I think there probably will be some sort of altcoin season. I just don't think it will be massive because we don't have the time for it to be massive. It could be very steep though. As we've seen in prior altcoin seasons, it's like the trend of altcoins outperforming Bitcoin lasts a long time, 315 days on both occurrences. But most of the gains of altcoins against Bitcoin occur in these little 2-month periods, right? Right here, we had a 2-month period of massive altcoin performance, another one right here, another one right here. And this, massive amount of altcoin pump really occurred in the first half of the 2021 cycle in a 2-month period. So we don't have much time left, but we can have some sort of altcoin parabolia because it doesn't really take much time for that to occur. I do probably think that's likely. I'd say 70% chance. And that's because I think Bitcoin is bullish macro. I do think Bitcoin will move upwards. I do think Bitcoin will move upwards until at least October this year. That's when the cycle expects it to top. It could extend beyond that, but I'm just going to say until at least October. And I think probably more likely than not, it will contain within the cycle. But I think moving forward from that point, because I've discussed that so many times, is when Bitcoin breaks this current macro range, I think it will have a massive opportunity to trigger hype in the altcoin market. And the reason I say that is because in the recent weeks, since April, on every single move we've seen on Bitcoin, Ethereum's doubled Bitcoin's performance. That's a very good sign because we haven't had good signs like that for a long time, since back here in November 2024, which is when I talked about when altcoins were meant to start doing well. Ever since that period from December or November through to April, we just saw death basically in the altcoin market on Ethereum. Nothing happened that was good even remotely. Now we're seeing some good positive signs, and we're consolidating below a major trigger point of resistance. And I do think that if that trigger point breaks, there's not much stopping Ethereum from going right to all-time highs. So for that reason, I think that when Bitcoin does decide to break out of this macro range, we will probably see some sort of altcoin outperformance against Bitcoin, some sort of altcoin season. Your question was, when will that happen? And basically, the reason I'm giving you all this context is because I want to narrow down this question to not just when altcoins will move, but the crux of it, which is when will Bitcoin give the signal for altcoins to move? And that signal, in my view, will only come from Bitcoin breaking its macro range, which you can see here on the screen. I'll make it a yellow line so you can see it. When this yellow line breaks, I think that signal has been triggered for various reasons, more in depth than this yellow line, but I'm trying to keep this short. Well, how long until we break that yellow line? That's the next question. Well, first of all, we need to do it. I think we probably will. And there's 2 scenarios here. One of them is we finish this inverted head and shoulders pattern that we've been forming. And in that case, we can just extrapolate the data. So this shoulder, for example, took from peak to peak, about 35 days. If that was going to occur again, 35 days, it would probably be finishing around now, but of course we haven't gone down yet. So this is the issue of trying to predict when Bitcoin will break out here. We haven't had an equilibrium between these two shoulders in length. And so realistically, I mean, we don't really know how long it will take if Bitcoin goes downwards to consolidate first. We do know that the probability of Bitcoin breaking upwards right now is on the table. And so realistically, it could be anything from a week to 2 months. You know, it's very difficult to know. And there's absolutely no clarity coming from the short and medium term. So your question is very hard to answer, but I guess I've given a lot of context surrounding the question. And I've kind of posed that when Bitcoin does decide to move here, we will probably see some bullishness in altcoins. I know it doesn't answer your question. You're asking how much time it is until we have to see an altcoin pump. Until we see an altcoin pump, I don't have the answer there. I'd say, again, anywhere from a week to maybe 2 months. And that 2-month end of the estimation is coming from cyclical deadlines. I don't think we have much time left in the cycle. You know, we're looking at until late October. And so unless the cycle extends, which is possible, but I'm not willing to estimate that, you know, I'm thinking about how long a Bitcoin move usually takes. Well, it usually takes about a month for Bitcoin to complete a macro move from start to finish. And so, you know, if we saw this move break in September, we'd have a month until October. And so, you know, 2 months is probably the latest we can see this macro breakout if it's going to come. Many say altcoin season won't happen because retail isn't investing due to economic contraction. How much do you believe in this statement? I don't think it's true. I don't think that economic conditions have as much as an impact on things like altcoin season as people seem to believe. And this is true because of what happened in 2017 and 2020. They were very different cycles fundamentally. Even 2013 was very different. Now, we didn't see an altcoin season in 2013 necessarily because there wasn't much of an altcoin market at that point. But in 2017, as I've explained, we had rates actively rising while the most parabolic altcoin season we saw ever was occurring. In 2020, there was a massive amount of stimulus. People had money to spend, and that probably was a main driver of 2020's one. But the point is, we've seen so far that there are very different conditions that underpin 2020's altcoin season and 2017's altcoin season. And even within those very, very, very different conditions, like literally polar opposite conditions, we still saw altcoin season not only in the same way, but also literally the same length to the day and in a very similar structure. So at this point, I think the trend is, it doesn't really matter what the economic conditions are. Altcoin seasons can still occur. As long as Bitcoin is rising and you're bullish on Bitcoin, I don't really see a reason why you would think that money can't trickle down into altcoins. And at this point, I think that most people are bullish on Bitcoin. So I don't think that retail's economic power is a massive factor of whether we see altcoin seasons. It could be a factor in the extent of the altcoin season. And obviously, if the economic conditions are severe enough, then maybe it would be if literally no one has any money. But I just don't think that's the case at this point. You have to remember, guys, retail doesn't have as much power as some people might think. Most of the money flowing into the market is from, big retail whales. Like, you think about it, right? For every 1,000 retail traders who are trading with, $1,000 to $10,000, it only takes a couple big whales to match their buy-in. So, it's not really that big of a deal how the lower bracket of income group people are doing financially for the sake of markets, really. If Bitcoin came back to the weekly Gaussian channel, is that a massive opportunity for buying, I assume you mean? Well, let's get into that. It's good that you've mentioned the weekly Gaussian channel, because the weekly Gaussian channel is an extremely significant indicator on Bitcoin that has divided bull markets and bear markets historically speaking. How do I mean? Well, what we've seen is that when we enter the weekly chart Gaussian channel, when we literally go into it in the price, we move through it, okay? That's happened on every single occurrence without fail. There has not been a single fake out. Every time we enter this, we move through it in the direction through which we entered it. Okay, and that means that if we did enter it, which currently it sits at 88,000, we would move through it and we'd likely start a bear market. For that reason, the weekly chart Gaussian channel is basically my bull market, bear market indicator. If we enter the Gaussian channel, if this correction goes to it and we enter it for any significant period of time, there is a little leadway there, like a couple weeks. Anything more than a couple weeks, we're screwed, basically. And me saying that historically has a 100% rate of accuracy, so I'm quite confident in it. So we could, again, look, we entered it here, but we didn't actually close within it. We didn't spend any time there, and therefore we're all good. So if we did something like that again, yes, hypothetically, it would pose a massive buying opportunity, especially considering the fact that that Gaussian channel is layered with many other indicators. I mean, just for one, if we're going to be very simplistic here, we can go ahead and bring back up the macro range I was talking about before, the line stemming from 2021. That line is currently sitting at around 94,000. Now, that Gaussian channel on the weekly chart is moving upwards right now. And in, maybe a month, maybe a little bit more than a month, that Gaussian channel will be at that support zone. And so if we, scraped the top of that support zone when the Gaussian channel got there, that would be a major bounce zone. Yes, it would be a major opportunity. We just cannot enter it. And last question for this video before part 2. Hey Wolf, you once mentioned that you'd rather hold USDC than USDT. I don't remember the exact reason, but was it because you didn't trust Tether? Could you explain why? Correct. I don't necessarily trust Tether in full. I do still hold USDT. I have a split between, and I generally do keep a split between just to diversify risk. But I think that USDC is just dramatically more trustworthy and more reliable because USDC is operated by Circle, and Circle is a publicly traded US company, and hence it's victim to, or I suppose victim, and it depends what your political leanings are, but it's scrutiny to US regulation, and that makes it much more secure in a lot of ways. USDT is just simply not. For that reason, we have way more audits on USDC, way less audits on USDT. USDT literally refused to publicize their holdings for years on end. It's not exactly a reliable indicator. In fact, they openly lied at one point, and they said that they're backed by 100% US dollars in bank account, which turned out to be a lie. So again, not a very good indicator of their trustworthiness. So for those simple reasons, and I think those are reasons that most people can accept as true, I just don't like to have significant portions of money in USDT. I prefer USDC, especially considering, there's higher fees on USDC generally, but that's not really a big deal anymore, especially if you have a significant amount of money in it, because then the fees are only such a minor percentage of what you were sending and what you were spending in general. So yeah, those are my reasons. I don't think it's a major deal. I don't think that there's an imminent USDT collapse necessarily, but I just prefer to keep it that way. So as I mentioned, guys, part 2 of this video will be posted in about 16 to 20 hours from now. There's about 5 or 6 more questions, which I find very interesting, and I think you will too, that I'll answer in that upcoming video. So keep an eye out, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and you get updated when that comes out. Hit the notification bell, and also check out the Bitunix Exchange if you are interested. Help out the channel and help out yourself by clicking on the link down below to sign up to this exchange. With an email address and a password, no identity verification required if you don't want to, globally accessible, no VPN required, which is very rare nowadays, especially rare on an exchange that has never been hacked before. Not a single security breach in 4 years on the market, very low in trading fees, and those fees, by the way, are made even lower. If you sign up with my link, you'll get a 15% trading fee discount attached to your account permanently, as well as up to $8,000 in rewards. You can see that down the bottom of the screen. So use my link if you're interested. Thank you guys. Hope you enjoyed. I'll catch you soon.